Rain lashed against the windows of the bus shelter. The storm had been relentless all evening, showing no signs of letting up. Each drop seemed to echo the turmoil inside Mia's mind. Mia hugged her coat tighter, shivering. The cold seeped through her layers, chilling her to the bone. She glanced around, hoping to see the bus lights in the distance, but the road remained dark and empty. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at the tattered posters on the wall. Each gust seemed to carry whispers of forgotten stories and lost souls, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the night. She just wanted to get home. Her eyelids felt heavy, the day's exhaustion settling in. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. She checked her watch again, the hands moving slower than ever. Finally, 2 headlights pierced the darkness, the bus groaning to a stop in front of her. Relief washed over her as she saw the familiar vehicle. Its lights a beacon of hope in the storm. It was the last one out. The doors hissed open, releasing a puff of warm air. The contrast between the warmth inside and the cold outside was stark, almost surreal. Mia stepped inside, grateful to escape the storm. She shook off the rain from her coat, feeling the warmth envelop her like a comforting embrace. The bus was nearly empty, the air thick with the smell of damp fabric and something faintly metallic. The seats glistened with moisture, remnants of previous passengers who had braved the storm. She chose a seat near the front, the flickering overhead lights casting long dancing shadows. The rhythmic hum of the engine was almost hypnotic, lulling her into a false sense of security. As the bus rumbled back to life, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The storm outside seemed to mirror the unease growing within her, each rumble of thunder a reminder that the night was far from over. The bus rumbled through the storm, each stop taking them further into the desolate outskirts of town. At each deserted stop, new passengers boarded. One by one they filed in, their faces obscured by shadows or wide-brimmed hats. They moved with an unsettling stillness, their eyes fixed and vacant. Mia noticed something truly bizarre. Though the passengers moved, their reflections in the rain-streaked windows remained unchanged, frozen, lifeless. A shiver ran down her spine. She tried to rationalize it, blamed the exhaustion, the flickering lights, the storm playing tricks on her eyes. But deep down, a primal fear began to stir. The bus creaked and groaned, the only sounds the howling wind and the rhythmic thud of rain against the roof. The storm outside was relentless, each drop of rain a tiny hammer against the metal frame of the bus. The occasional flash of lightning illuminated the dark, revealing fleeting glimpses of the desolate road ahead. The silence inside was heavy, suffocating. Mia felt a prickling sensation on the back of her neck. She glanced around, her eyes darting from one shadow to another, trying to make sense of the unease that gripped her. The other passengers were eerily still, their faces hidden in the dim light. Someone was watching her. She turned her head slowly, her breath catching in her throat. The feeling of being observed was almost tangible, like a weight pressing down on her shoulders. She scanned the rows of seats, her heart pounding louder with each passing second. A few rows back, a figure sat shrouded in shadows. Their face was obscured, but she could feel their gaze, cold and unwavering. The figure's presence was unsettling, a dark blot in the already gloomy atmosphere. Mia's mind raced with questions. Who were they, and why were they watching her? Her breath hitched in her chest. She quickly averted her eyes, heart pounding in her ears. The fear was almost paralyzing, a cold dread that seeped into her bones. She tried to calm herself, taking deep breaths, but the sense of danger was overwhelming. "Best not to look," a raspy voice whispered from beside her. Mia jumped, startled. The voice was close, too close, sending a shiver down her spine. She turned to see who had spoken, but there was no one there. The emptiness beside her was more terrifying than any presence. The bus driver, his face etched with an unsettling calmness, kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "They don't like to be stared at." His words echoed in her mind, adding to the growing sense of dread. Who were they, and what did they want? The questions lingered, unanswered, as the bus continued its journey into the stormy night. The bus shuddered to a stop, the doors wheezing open with a sigh. One by one, the strange passengers disembarked. They moved like phantoms, disappearing into the swirling darkness beyond the bus. Each time, Mia held her breath, watching as their forms vanished into the void, leaving behind only the faint echo of their presence. She noticed something even stranger. The seats they vacated remained unchanged. No warmth lingered. No indentations marked where they had been sitting. It was as if they had never existed at all, just empty seats, a chilling testament to the passengers' eerie passage. The bus rumbled on, venturing deeper into the heart of the storm. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windows, creating a cacophony of sound that drowned out any attempt at conversation. The passengers sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, the tension palpable in the air. The wind howled louder, a symphony of eerie moans and shrieks. It was as if the storm itself was alive, a malevolent force intent on swallowing the bus whole. The trees along the roadside bent and twisted under the onslaught, their branches clawing at the sky. The headlights illuminated a road that seemed to stretch endlessly into the abyss. The darkness was impenetrable, a void that threatened to consume everything in its path. The road ahead was a narrow ribbon of hope, the only thing standing between the passengers and the unknown. Mia's unease morphed into full-blown terror. Her eyes darted around the bus, searching for any sign of reassurance, but finding none. The faces of her fellow passengers were masks of fear, mirroring her own. Where was this bus taking her? The question echoed in her mind, a relentless drumbeat of anxiety. She pressed her face against the cold glass of the window, trying to make sense of the swirling darkness outside. Suddenly, the bus lurched violently, brakes screeching. The sudden jolt threw Mia forward, her heart racing as she clung to the seat in front of her. The bus seemed to be fighting against an invisible force, struggling to stay on the road. Mia gripped the seat in front of her, her heart threatening to beat out of her chest. She could feel the fear of the other passengers, a collective anxiety that hung heavy in the air. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw it, a shape emerging from the darkness, growing clearer with each passing second. Her breath caught in her throat as the bus drew closer. An ancient crumbling bus station, shrouded in mist and lit by a sickly green light. It looked like something out of a forgotten era, a relic of a time long past. The station seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, drawing the bus inexorably towards it. It emanated an aura of dread, as if it had been plucked from a nightmare and dropped into reality. The very air around it seemed to vibrate with a sense of foreboding, a warning to all who approached. This was no ordinary stop. It was a place that defied explanation, a crossroads between the known and the unknown. The passengers could feel it in their bones, a primal instinct that screamed at them to turn back. This was the final destination, a place where the journey ended and something else began. The passengers braced themselves, knowing that whatever awaited them at this stop, it would change their lives forever. The bus doors hissed open, revealing the station in all its eerie glory. The air hung heavy with the smell of decay and something ancient, something distinctly otherworldly. The station was teeming with figures, their forms shifting and swirling in the unnatural light. They were like shadows given life, their eyes glowing with an eerie luminescence. Mia felt a cold dread grip her heart. These were the passengers from the bus, but they were different now, freer, more menacing. They moved with an unsettling grace, their forms fluctuating, their whispers echoing through the station. She realized with a jolt that they were all staring at her, waiting. The bus driver turned to her, his face illuminated by the ghostly green light. His eyes, once filled with a strange calmness, now held a flicker of pity. "This is as far as I go," he said, his voice barely a whisper above the wind. "You're safer on the bus, you know. Out there." He gestured towards the station, his face grim. "Out there, they're waiting." Mia wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. She was paralyzed with fear. The driver nodded slowly, as if understanding her unspoken terror. "Sometimes," he said, his voice raspy, "the living need a ride too." And with that, he closed the doors, leaving Mia alone in the suffocating silence of the empty bus. The next thing Mia knew, she was jolted awake. The bus was bathed in the warm glow of the morning sun, pulling up to her usual stop. Gone was the storm, the eerie passengers, the terrifying station. It was as if the night had never happened. Had it been a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion? She stepped off the bus, shaky legs barely able to hold her weight. The familiar sights and sounds of her street felt alien, as if she had stepped into a parallel world. A world where the terrifying events of the night were nothing more than a fading nightmare. But deep down, a seed of doubt remained, planted in the fertile soil of fear. Days turned into weeks, the memory of that night fading like a bad dream. Yet Mia couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes following her every move. She avoided taking the bus, opting to walk instead, her heart pounding with every passing shadow. One evening as she walked home, she noticed something peculiar. On the sidewalk, half hidden in the fading light, lay a single white button. It was identical to the ones she had seen on the strange passengers' coats. A chill ran down her spine, the memory of the bus driver's words echoing in her ears. Sometimes the living need a ride too. But what if they decided they weren't done with the living yet?